Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome back to another episode of the Steelers Preview. We are here. We are the triumphant trifecta coming at you for another Thursday night. I can't screw this up again. I screwed it up Tuesday. Behind the Steel Curtain editor, Dave Schofield, joined by Behind the Steel Curtain deputy editor, Michael Beck. Michael, how are you doing this morning on the left coast?
Morning. It's only 3 hours, but I'm doing great. Sun shining out here. How could it be a bad day?
If the sun is shining and it's not too hot, it's always a great day. And of course, we have our I keep messing it up. Podcast director, podcast manager, podcast extraordinaire. We'll just say that Brian Anthony Davis. Brian, how's it going?
I'm something. At least you didn't call me a complete boob, which usually that's for the Facebook audience that calls me that. So I'm feeling pretty good. Great evening, gentlemen. It's just nice to be here. It's June, and guess what's on our mind? Talking Steelers. I love it.
Well, it's so tough because June is dead. June is the least active month of the year when it comes to the NFL, but we're still here. We're talking Steelers. We are bringing it to you. I know people are already saying hashtag 2 a.m. Brian already said the word boob, so we're already thinking about that. So
but not in the right way.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just couldn't help it coming from Mr. 2 a.m. himself. So I forgot to call Michael. I forgot to refer to him as Michael the Moose Beck. I guess that's what we're going to go with. And I got to do a couple shout outs. First of all, there went to be a shout out last night on the show. And then Lance and Michael got talking about penalties in hockey. So we got distracted because we were trying to give a shout out yesterday was the 1 year anniversary of Steelers Nation Germany. I was contacted by someone about that and just wanted to know if we could mention that and that they've been there for a year. If you're in Germany, anyone listening here in Germany, make sure you check that out. I am going to very soon be doing a call out for people in an article we'll ask for in the podcast. I'm going to want to start to compile some Steelers fan groups from different areas that we could keep on the website as a reference for people. So if they're looking to try to connect with Steeler fans, either online or in person, I know it's kind of tougher to do things in person right now, but to know where you could connect in person in the future so we could have that reference for you. That's one of the things that we're going to be looking to do. So we have that shout out, but we have to give a humongous, enormous shout out, so much so I was even tempted to bust out my singing voice because one Lance Williams is the big 5-0 today.
Half a century of Lance.
I know.
Awesome.
That's crazy that this world has been graced with Lance Williams for half of a century now. That is something to be commended. I hope Lance is not watching tonight. I hope that he is enjoying his day. He was texting with me some today, and I'm like, Lance, stop thinking about this stuff today. Go enjoy your birthday. Think about this tomorrow. So got to give a big shout out there. Also want to give a shout out to all our other fellow podcasters. You know, we have Lance Williams. We have Tony Defio. We have the three of us. We have my brother, Big Bro Rich. Want to give a special shout out right now. I doubt he's listening to the show. He's actually on his way home from the hospital. He was there with his wife this evening. She, for those of you that might have heard in the fall, she did have a diagnosis of breast cancer. She had surgery. She was deemed cancer-free. And then because of everything with COVID, she is now she had her reconstruction surgery today. Apparently everything went well. She's doing well on her way home, which is things we want to hear because she has Big Brosco's wife, my sister-in-law, her name's Renee. She kicked cancer's butt and always want to celebrate that any chance we get.
Congratulations. And you know what? I know this is a shameless plug for myself, but from one cancer survivor to another, it feels really good. So I'm so proud to hear that, Renee, that you beat cancer. So God bless you.
Yeah. So we had to take a little bit of it's kind of a little bit somber, a little bit celebratory, everything there. But we had to take care of business with that. And that's some really important stuff. So happy birthday,
why?
Lance. Why is that, Brian?
Because everybody in this live chat all of us, we are the BTSC family, and we talk about that all the time. And it's very important. Your celebrations, all of us. It's not just everybody on the podcast, it's everybody out there. All of our celebrations are the same because we celebrate Steeler victories. But when we hear about somebody struggling or somebody having a problem, Steeler fan 74, who his scans were clear a couple weeks ago, and he's in the live chat right now. Every one of you is special to us, and you're all a part of our village, which is our family. So it means too much to us.
Exactly. And, Michael, anything you want to say before we dive into our Steeler stuff?
You know what? A huge family. You know, just love all you guys. Always hope for the best for each and every one of you. Kicking cancer's butt, that's an amazing accomplishment, and super happy about that. And again, to Lance, I wish him a happy birthday earlier, but again, happy big 50 over the hill. That's an accomplishment of its own right there. We all know how Lance is. Making it to 50 is pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it could have gone the other way. You know, I mean, Lance is the one who killed Tupac, so maybe it was that. Just think if the shoe would have been on the other foot, we wouldn't have had Lance Williams with us. Sorry, that's just an ongoing joke that we have.
I have
Michael,
never heard that story.
I don't honestly. I haven't either, but I know where the podcast is. I just never got a chance to go back and listen to it. But Michael got to do his first show with just him and Lance last night. If you did not get to check that out, last night's standard is a standard. Make sure you go back and do that. But let's get rolling here. We're going to talk about some news. Michael brought some news up to our attention before we started tonight, so I'm going to let him take over with one of these NFL things going on right now.
Well, it's official that Jamal Adams has requested a trade from the New York Jets. So what does that really mean for the NFL? And, of course, Adam Schefter did say there was a list of 7 teams. I have them here. Break them down really quick. The Cowboys, Texans, Chiefs, Eagles, Niners, and Seahawks. And then lastly is the Baltimore Ravens. Of course, that list might not be exactly what it ends up being. Who knows if they can even offer something that the Jets are willing to take. But I guess kind of my question to you guys, I guess we'll start with Dave on this one. If Jamal Adams ends up on the Baltimore Ravens roster, if it happens and they're not trading away any other players, it's for picks. What does that mean for the AFC? What does it mean for even a shot at the AFC North? Is it possible? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's always possible because especially when one Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger is taking the snaps and flinging the rock around like he's been claimed that it's been going on by multiple teammates now of how hard he's throwing the ball, that the Steelers just need to do their thing. They've got to pay attention to different things like that. Sometimes you can get so caught up on what someone else is doing, you forget to take care of your own business. This is an awful story because it's about fantasy baseball, which I am in a fantasy baseball league, which I don't know anything about baseball very much. But one year I went with a draft strategy where I drafted right before the guy that won the league the season before. And my strategy was I'm going to take whoever I think he's going to take. And that's how I'm going to draft. And I came in last. And ever since then, I have a numerical spreadsheet that I used, and I've finished in the top 4 every season ever since. But my point is worrying about that other guy, not a good idea. The Steelers just need to take care of themselves. They'll worry about that 2 times this season, and other than that, don't even think about it.
Right. So down to you, Bad. What are you thinking? If Adams is a Raven, are they winning the division? Is that a lock? What do you think?
Nothing's a lock in this league, especially with the fact you look at the AFC North. Since the AFC North came into being in 2002, there has never been a three-peat. The Steelers have had a chance to three-peat. The Ravens have a chance to three-peat this year. The problem is it is so loaded, especially in the top 2, and it's usually Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Sometimes Cincinnati is the squirrel that finds a nut, or it's Cleveland. One day it'll be Cleveland winning that division again, possibly. I mean, I've been watching forecasts in Hades, so you never know what might happen. I mean, if
the temperature dropping,
yeah, if a snowstorm happens, you never know. But here's the thing: every time you pick a winner for that division, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. Last year, everybody had the Ravens at 7-9 to 9-7, and I was like, whoa, not so fast. They are a better team than anybody's given them credit for. Now, people are having them at 13-3. It doesn't work out that way. On paper, yeah. On paper, you can say that. But it just doesn't always work out that way. But here's what scares me about the Baltimore Ravens. And it's not just Lamar. I'm not gonna, since we call him Benjamin Todd Roethlisberger, we've got to do the same thing. Lamar Demetrius Jackson. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I just looked it up. So Lamar Demetrius.
I was going to be super impressed that you knew that, and
yeah.
you spoiled it. Oh well.
I'm impressive that way, but it's not just him. It's a guy that I don't know if a lot of you can say his name, and it's Eric DeCosta. I think he's one of the finest GMs in the league. He followed one of the finest GMs in the league in Hall of Fame tight end Ozzie Newsome. But in my mind, Ozzie Newsome was a Hall of Fame general manager as well. So it always seems that they seem to find these guys and find these guys cheap. Calais Campbell for a 5th rounder. Are you kidding me? They pull off these deals that the Steelers don't right now. Steelers have one of the best general managers in the league as well. But something really happens when Baltimore is on the phone, and they make things happen. And Eric DeCosta, I thought there was going to be a drop-off. There was not. He's just as good. So they can make these things happen. And you got to remember, Baltimore is an it team around the league. And the reason they're an it team right now is there's a lot of excitement because of Lamar Jackson and the way he's playing. There's a lot of excitement about the fact that they've lost a lot of players on defense last year, and they still were a pretty tough team to score against. And the thing about the Ravens is they score early, and then they pull a lead, and you just don't come back on them. So that's what you look at when you look at the Baltimore Ravens. Would they be a favorite for me to go ahead and add Jamal Adams? Yeah, they probably can add him, and they'll be just as strong.
Because they're not paying a quarterback.
Yeah, they're not yet, but they will.
They will.
That chicken's coming home to roost soon. Yeah. And when that happens, woo, look out. And we've seen it happen with them, with Joe Flacco. So, they could add a guy like that because it's a very attractive team to go to, and they would be just as tough. But remember, when you add superstars together and not pieces of the puzzle, sometimes it just doesn't mix. Remember, you've got Earl Thomas there. Do you really need to couple him with Jamal Adams or pieces of the puzzle that are going to work? So that's my thought on that. I don't expect him to come to the Steelers because the Steelers really, it'd be awesome, but really that's not what they're doing right now. They don't need to. They've given up a lot in a trade last year for Minkah Fitzpatrick, which I still think was a steal for what they got. I don't care what they gave up. I just don't see them doing it in back-to-back years because Jamal Adams is going to cost a first-round pick unless you're the Baltimore Ravens, who will get him for a 6th rounder in 2027.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? That's fair. And speaking of that, if we could quickly force you to craft a trade for the Steelers, if they were going in that direction, why don't we kick it back up to Dave? Because
you saw mine on Twitter already.
I did see that.
I just threw this out. Now, I threw a trade out for Minkah Fitzpatrick, and it was not, and they paid a lot more for him. I just threw it out as a starting point back then, and I think it was 3 picks straight up, but one of them wasn't a first. Here was this one. I haven't really thought it through. I was driving home and tweeted it at a stoplight. And so I haven't really weighed it out. But here's what I said. How about Terrell Edmonds, a 2nd and a 4th? That's it.
If that's what it came down to, I would jump. That's an absolute. But I think the trade would probably have to center around Terrell going back the other way. There's just too many eggs in that hen house. But Brian, what do you think? What's that trade look like?
wow, we're talking about chickens coming home to roost, eggs in a hen house. I gotta tell you, they would have to come up with a finger licking good trade here, Michael and David. And I don't think Terrell Edmonds, a 2 and a 4, is gonna get it done. I think a first round pick is going to have to go back to the Jets as well. So if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers, you're probably giving up. I would say they're not going to have to give up a first and a third, but I'm saying a first and a fourth. It's probably what they're going to have to do. Quite possibly a first and a fourth and maybe a second the year after.
Here's something you're missing, Brian. And this is what, and people don't want to hear this. Steeler fans don't want to hear this. But Terrell Edmonds is much more respected around the league than he is with the Steelers fan base.
Oh,
the Steelers fan base still can't get over him being a first round pick. And because of that, they think that he has no value. They would be dumping him. And it wouldn't be. The Steelers feel like they would be giving up someone who's not that far back, in their opinion. So that's why I don't think they would give a first. I think the Steelers think that they're better with Edmonds with what they want to do. But Steelers fans are like, oh, well, we'd have to give them more for them to take Edmonds. That's not the case.
If you're the Jets,
he would carry more weight with the Jets than he would with their own Steeler fan base.
You know what? I agree to disagree with that because I just don't really think that's going to happen. Because I don't know how much real value he has because he doesn't have the interceptions. And just on paper, he's the biggest stat that he has is number of snaps.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he's respected because I respect him more than
fans look at stats. Teams look at tape. And honestly, you know who breaks down the tape for us more than anybody? Jeffrey Benedict. And do you know what Jeffrey Benedict thinks? That Terrell Edmonds bails out Mike Hilton all the time. That Mike Hilton is not very good, but Terrell Edmonds is. So that's some of the conclusions that he's come to when we had him on the show a couple months ago on Stat Geek. So the fans just look at the stats and they look at these other things. Yes, Edmonds is not good at tracking the ball. That's probably one of his weakest things, but he does a lot of other things well that other teams recognize that the Steelers fans don't. I'm just throwing it out there.
I hear you there. Let me bring up a couple from the fan base. John Trent says Bud Edmonds in a 4th round pick. Bud's interesting, but the thing is
they don't know what they have in Highsmith yet because they haven't been able to do any OTA.
Don't really have a replacement. Yeah. So that's the problem right there. I mean, Bud would be I could understand that because you don't feel like you're losing too much with Bud there because only 1 year, but you're losing the production that you need this year. Even though you're bringing in another stud safety who's going to need to get paid pretty soon too. That's pretty tough. Andrew Wilbar wants to go Dupree, Deion Kane, and Edmonds for Adams. There's got to be draft picks.
Yeah, they want draft picks. They want capital there.
So, as far as that goes, there are some others out there too, but I cannot see the Steelers really wanting to part with Edmonds, and I just don't see them really being a player in this trade. But the fact that the Steelers weren't on the list does not concern me whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, to kind of sum it up with Edmonds, I did this article last year around this time, is if Edmonds would have been a 3rd round pick and not a 1st round pick, Steelers Nation would love him right now.
Absolutely.
They would love him.
We've been talking about that for a while.
Yeah. So that's a big thing. Michael, we've kind of, Bad and I've been back and forth. What are you thinking here?
I think if this trade were to go down, I am also the believer that Edmonds would have to be a part of it. I think just to kind of replace that body for the Jets, as well as opening up that spot, maybe even throw in Trey Edmonds so the 2 brothers can go and Jamal can get his number, if that's important. I don't think it is, but I also think that the first round pick is what it's going to be centered on, and a secondary pick is what's going to differentiate the leader of the pack. So if it ends up being a 3rd, it ends up being a 2nd in, say, 2022, I could see that happening. But I'm also in the camp that I don't think the Steelers would do this, especially because who knows? Like, I hate to be that guy, but this season might not even happen, and then he's a free agent, and you just gave away those picks for nothing. I can just hear Kevin Colbert right now saying, like, well, we're not going to explore those avenues just because we don't know what's happening in the future. So it's like I can't honestly see it happening. But if I'm the Steelers, maybe I throw just kind of my hat into the mix just to kind of drive up the price. I wouldn't want Baltimore getting him for nothing. So maybe just make a quick phone call to your due diligence. Why not?
Yeah, and I do want to add, because I had thrown this out there before. I had done a piece for Bleeding Green Nation earlier. I would say this winter, because it was right after the season when they were talking to other teams and asked them specific questions. And the one question that I was asked was, is there anybody on the Jets one player on the Jets you would like to see on the Steelers, past or present? Well, I said past. You already got the Pitt running back connection. That would have been fantastic to have Curtis Martin back in the day. But I said Jamal Adams. I said, how great would it be to have both all-pro safeties on the Steelers? So I'll just leave it at that. So, Brian, you ready to roll us into our topic for this week?
Yeah, here we go. So you saw it at the beginning of the show. The title for tonight's show is simply, do the Steelers really need a number one wide receiver to be successful in 2020? So what does that mean? Before we get started, we have to define exactly what a number one wide receiver is. And do the Steelers need that superstar? Because if I'm going to define a number one wide receiver, you've seen it in the past with Antonio Brown, was clear and present. He was the number one wide receiver for many a year. But that also entailed being a ball hog. It entailed at that time being a diva as well. And it entailed having stats that were well above 1,000 yards, well above 100 catches, and being the guy that drove the team and everybody else got the scraps. That's my vision of a wide receiver one. Michael, what do you think of when you think of a wide receiver one?
Now, I don't tend to look at like the receivers on a team position, like by your wide receiver one, your wide receiver two. Like I look at it X, Y, Z. So I don't typically think of it more in a sense of that's our best guy, therefore he is our wide receiver one, much like how you explained there, Brian. But I think a wide receiver one in the NFL would be someone who's putting up those numbers that can flirt with leading the league. That's going to be in the top 10, top 5. Someone who's putting up close to 100 receptions. That's definitely 1,000-yard receiver. The guy that you throw the ball to when it's third and long, you're like, if someone's making a play, it's going to be this guy. That's kind of how I look at it.
Dave.
Yeah, I used to always think of a number one receiver is the best receiver on each team. End of story, because that's what it is. But that's not what the NFL community thinks of it anymore. And I know Lance Williams has tackled this question before, and by his definition, there's only really maybe 10 number one wide receivers in the league, which means the majority of teams don't have one. So, and it's that guy that has all your focus and everything's, even with everyone throwing everything they got at the guy, he's still going to come out and he's going to make the play and he's going to put up the numbers regardless, no matter what you try to do to defend him. So that's what some people think of it as. I always just thought, the best receiver on a team. But now I understand the difference, because what if you don't have a clear-cut number one receiver? And as Wes said in the live chat, is something I've said in the past. I'm like, I would rather have, it's not that one that he said it earlier. I would rather have 4 number 2s than 1 and 3 3s. But that's just me, of where you're spreading the ball around. So if you're talking that you have one guy that is the guy, and it doesn't matter that the defense is so focused on him, he's still going to produce. I don't know that the Steelers need to have that with the depth that they have at wide receiver right now, or let's just say the potential that they have with their young wide receivers right now.
It seems that they do have a whole heck of a lot of depth, and there's been recent years that we thought they have, and I could go ahead and mention 2000 16 as a great example when at the beginning of the season, it looked like they were just loaded for bear. And then the next thing you know, it's the AFC Championship game, and they've got Kobe Hamilton, as your number 2 wide receiver and starting. And no offense to Kobe Hamilton, but he was not considered at the beginning of the season. So if you look at this lineup of wide receivers, of course, we could, in theory, you can say that Juju Smith-Schuster is still the number 1 wide receiver. He is the guy that Ben trusts the most at this point. But he's also the one that you expect to get a lot of coverage. And we saw him get the double coverage in 2019. You also saw him getting passes from Doc Hodges and Mason Rudolph and not Ben Roethlisberger. So Ben Roethlisberger comes into play a lot with defining who a number 1 wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers is, because it's his number 1 option. If you go back to the 1970s, Terry Bradshaw's number 1 receiver in the mid-70s was Lynn Swann. He later on said, towards the end of both of their careers, it was John Stallworth. He favored Stallworth because he was more in sync with number 82 at that time than he was with number 88. He was in sync with both, don't get me wrong, but it seemed like if he had to pass the ball to one guy, that's who it was going to be. If you go back to 2018 and you look at that Denver game, when things were starting to blow up with we didn't realize they were blowing up with Antonio Brown at the time. But when Ben, after that game, called Antonio Brown out and said, I would have thrown it 4 times to Juju Smith-Schuster in that position, that shows the comfort that he was getting with Juju Smith-Schuster. So that comfort still remains. However, if you look at the fact that you have a dynamic Deontay Johnson, James Washington was their leading receiver last year, and you have a number 1 pick, well, actually number 2 pick, but your top pick being Chase Claypool out of Notre Dame, then there are some options. And, of course, Ben likes to throw to Ryan Switzer as well, and you have 2 tight ends that catch the ball a lot. So there's going to be more options. So that means there's going to be less balls to go around. So what I'd like to do next, fellas, is have you define what the best possible numbers, what range in yards and touchdown passes for each of the top 4 you would think would be.
I want to throw something out there first, just to get an idea. I looked up to share what kind of numbers you get as a whole from the Steelers wide receivers. And that is, they were in 2017 and 2018 when Ben Roethlisberger played all but 1 game those 2 seasons, and that was because he sat out in week 16. The Steelers wide receivers, this isn't tight ends, this isn't running backs, the wide receivers in 2017, they totaled 3,272 yards. In 2018, they totaled 3,302 yards. That's a difference of 30 yards in those 2 seasons. Last year, 2,166 yards. So you had a drop off of 1,200 yards in production by the wide receivers last year. Now, I know a lot of that was quarterback play. I know Vodka Drinker asked a great question earlier in the live chat that said, can you have a number 1 wide receiver with poor quarterback play? So bottom line is, as a whole, I would say that the Steelers need to be going over 3,000 yards from their receivers. So how are we going to split that up? Since I dropped that out there to start, maybe we should bounce it to Michael for him to go ahead and answer.
You know what? I could see any of those top 4 hit 1,000 yards. I wouldn't be even Claypool. I wouldn't be surprised. James Washington could put up 1,000. I think Deontay, his route running is just so clean he could. But if I'm going to break him down one by one, I think realistically for Juju, he's hit 1,400 yards before, so I would say that's still his top. His bottom, if Ben and Juju are both healthy, I would say it's probably 1,000. That's what I'm going over. What he did last year is just he was injured, poor quarterback play. I just don't see it being repeated. When it comes to Deontay, I think that's another guy that could explode and go up to those 1,400 yards. I don't think he's going to quite get there, but I think it'll be close around 900 to 1,200. James Washington, I think a little less again, but again, I could see him getting up to as high as 1,000 yards and maybe down to around 750. Then Claypool, it's tough because he's a rookie, and this is just a really weird year for rookies. But let's just say his max is around 850 yards just because of what's going on, and his bottom's probably around 500.
Honestly, we'll get to Claypool individually in a little bit because we'll that's our last draft pick to talk about, and that's why we're on the subject of receivers. But to throw mine out there is, I would, just any way that you can get to close to 3,500 yards from your receivers, regardless of what it takes to get there with the different number of players. If you're talking about, I mean, think about it, four guys going for 900 yards. Four guys going for 900 yards. That's 3,600 yards with four receivers. Steelers fans should go crazy for that. That would be fantastic. So we'll talk about Claypool a little bit because I have his numbers much lower because I don't want the expectations to be too high for him this year. But if I would like four guys over 800, and I don't care if any of them hit 1,000 because of the way it's going to go. The question is Juju a number one wide receiver? The question is, will Juju be the number one wide receiver on the Steelers by the end of the season, or is it going to be a different player? That's actually a better scenario for the Steelers, in my opinion. So what do you think, Brian?
First of all, I think Juju needs to be leading this team statistically because he is going to be leading. He needs to step up and be a true number one in theory. However, he does not need the stats to do it. Now, he might think he needs the stats. The NFL universe that's judging people based on stats, and here we are judging people based on stats as well. But when you look at it, I'd rather have a running back by committee that's going to go ahead and lead the league and split up guys healthier. So I'd rather have receivers getting that 32 to 3,500 yards collectively. So if you break it down, I'm thinking that Juju needs 1,100 yards. Just to keep it going. He's not a selfish guy, but I still think you need a leader of that group. So you need about 1,100 from Juju, and then you need 2,400 yards from each of the next three. Like you said, I don't care how you get it. You say Deontay could be good for 1,000, and the Steelers have had multiple 1,000-yard receivers in the past. So say Deontay gets 1,000, you're up to 2,100 yards. You go ahead and say James has 800, you're up to 29, and then there's 500 or 600 from a rookie that's learning the system, and like Michael said, it's a very odd year, that you have your 34 to 3,500, and that's a good breakdown. Touchdowns, you get them whoever is open. The touchdown numbers do not matter as much as long as you hit a certain mark.
I can understand exactly where you're going from there. So what do we need?
I think the bottom line to it, you said it around 3,600. I'm saying around 32 at the lowest, but around 3,400. And think about the fact you got to throw in, maybe you're hoping to get 1,000 yards out of your tight ends, and you're probably going to get 400 yards out of your backfield. So at that point, there's your 5,000 that Ben's gotten in the past. Can Ben throw for 5,000 this year? Can that elbow throw for 5,000? Does he need to throw for 5,000? No, if the running backs are going to.
Yeah.
So that comes into play as well.
Yeah.
If your running backs aren't going, you really need to have your wide receivers going crazy. But the bottom line to the whole thing, you don't need a guy getting 1,500 yards and 140 catches. You don't need Antonio Brown numbers. You don't need that. You need a group that can break them up, and whoever gets them, and they're happy for each other, and they're working collectively as a unit.
Michael, what did you want to throw in there? Because I have one more thing before we finish this.
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's a couple other receivers too. I think little buddy Ryan Switzer, he's going to have some numbers. Ben loves throwing him the ball. He's going to get some looks. Deon Kane, I think he'll be the other guy that makes his team. He's someone that showed flashes running down the sideline, just coming straight off the Colts practice squad. So I think there's even more numbers to go around. So this breakdown is going to be really interesting. I think at the end of the year, Steelers fans are going to be like, "Oh, our receiving core! I was expecting so much more." But then when you total it, it's going to be outstanding. And Ben's probably, if he can throw the ball, he will be flirting with that $5,000 yards.
Yeah, what's $5,000 for Ben Roethlisberger is what he makes in pregame warmups.
Yeah.
So here's what I wanted to throw out to you guys. Last time the Pittsburgh Steelers won the Super Bowl was in the 2008 season. Who were the receivers on that team, and how many yards did they have?
I'd like to go ahead and take that.
Okay, yeah, this isn't the trivia yet, but this is just to cover this up because I have a different trivia. So go ahead.
Well, your top three receivers, I don't exactly know the numbers, but of course it was Hines Ward.
Hines Ward had 1,043 yards. Next.
Santonio Holmes had about
821.
Okay. And Nate Washington, number 85.
Nate Washington had 631. Now, you want to know the truth? No other wide receiver had over 100 yards on the season. So the receivers were 1,000, 800, 600.
And then Heath, who was not a receiver.
Of course, you had Heath. He had 500. Mewelde Moore he had 514. Mewelde Moore had 320. And Matt Spaeth had 136. The next most yardage in that year was 64 yards by Limas Swede.
Good old Limas Swede.
So
it's amazing he had that many.
So that's my point is the Steelers, we're talking about 4 different receivers and all the numbers are going to put up. There's only one football to go around. And let's transition this real quick because the last draft pick we have to talk about is Chase Claypool. And I already did some projected numbers for Chase Claypool, and you guys are going to be really surprised of what it would take to be a really good season for Chase Claypool. Either one of you want to throw out kind of your expectations for him this year going forward? Well, first of all, did we like the pick? I know Michael liked the pick because it kind of got a lot of good things rolling for him.
Best pick in franchise history as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, if they picked my buddy, I'd be No, I thought he was a great pick. I mean, we can talk about how much you wanted a running back in that situation and the kid from Ohio State, but really what this team's built on, I thought that was the right choice to go wide receiver at that spot. So I do love the pick. I don't think I think he's a worker. I think he is. I mean, his willingness to play on special teams, to fight every single time he's out there, I love it. Gives Ben a huge target who we've seen 13 touchdown catches last year. Fantastic. I love it. What do you think we need from him this year? If I could answer your question that you said that you asked, Dave, I'm going to say kind of like Deontay Johnson last year when we said he only needed 3 touchdown catches. Mm-hmm. I would say a great season out of this pick would be 5 touchdown catches, about 350 yards.
Okay.
And I'd be satisfied
for
the first year.
You know, because that Megatron, Mapletron nickname connection, what he did at the combine, how that was all tied together. When I did my kind of rookie projection stats, I kind of looked at what Steelers rookies have done recently when it came to yardage, and then I kind of looked over at what Megatron did, because they are just completely the same body type and athletically, it's almost identical. And Calvin Johnson he didn't light the world on fire as a rookie. He had 48 receptions, 756 yards, and 4 touchdowns.
And a rushing touchdown.
Okay, that is also true. That is also true. Right there.
Because I had the same numbers.
Yeah, but remember, he was on a hideous team that went 0-16 his second year, I believe.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But another thing I try to factor in is these yards that Juju, Deontay, and James Washington have thrown in. So it's realistic if these rookie productions continue, say if there's an injury, I could see him legitimately around 800 yards, but If everyone's healthy, it's probably going to be closer to 500. I think that 3 to 5 touchdowns fair, especially in the red zone. You got Eric Ebron. If he's the jump ball guy, that's where the ball is going to end up until Chase Claypool gets rolling a little further down the road. So I think roughly the stats I put together on the website was about 800 yards, I believe 5 touchdowns, and right around 50 receptions. I think that's achievable, but it's going to be some outside factors at play there.
When I first did this breakdown on StatGeek, which was right after the draft, so it's been a while, I did the average of Juju, Deontay Johnson, Martavis Bryant, Emmanuel Sanders, and James Washington, all of their rookie seasons, all those guys. Because other than Bryant, who was a 4th-round pick, they were all either 3rd or 2nd-round picks. And when I averaged all those together, because, I mean, they all at least had a touchdown, but when you averaged them all out, it was averaged around 38 receptions, just under 550 yards, and 5 touchdowns. If he has that season, that's a fantastic season. If he gets over 500 yards his rookie year, that's a great rookie year. Everything above that, in my opinion, is bonus. But I think Michael hit on a key point. If everyone else is healthy throughout the season, if everyone else is not healthy throughout the season, then he might need a little bit more production. Sound good, Ed?
And that's why you saw production out of Deontay Johnson last year that you didn't expect. You also saw more production out of James Washington as well because of that. If I can elaborate on some of the things that you said, I agree with you on those other receivers. One guy that you mentioned, Martavis Bryant, he's interesting because he
was inactive the first 4 games, wasn't he?
I was going to say the first 6 games.
It was something like, I remember
6.
Because what year did they play Detroit that year? Or what game? Because I know they played Detroit at Heinz Field. It was my first game that I went to with my dad, and he was jogging around. Wasn't that his rookie year?
2013.
Okay, was that 13? Yeah, when was, or maybe
they
I'm
were
thinking
wearing
of the
the
wrong
Bumblebees.
Game.
It was
Maybe I'm thinking of the wrong game. Is that when Martavis was the rookie?
No, because he was a rookie in 2014.
Okay, then it was the next year. It was the Tampa game that he was jogging around the field.
Okay.
That I knew it was one of those 2 games. One of my, because my dad and I sat in the same 2 seats both years before I had season tickets, and I just remember saying, "Oh, look at that guy! They're going to have him active soon." So I know he was not active at the game that I was at.
I believe it was a Monday night.
Mm-hmm.
I believe week 6 against the Houston Texans, somewhere around there, I believe he caught a long touchdown pass from Ben Roethlisberger, and he finally got out there. Or that could have been week 7, but I believe that he sat the first 6 games of his career.
Yeah, I know it was at least 4.
Now
that we're gonna have to go look that one up.
The reason I brought that up though, and you brought it up, but I was about to bring it up. The reason he sat so long had a lot to do with maturity.
Yeah,
and you mentioned that he was a 4th-round draft pick,
and it was understanding the system.
Yes. You mentioned that the reason he was a 4th round. You didn't mention the reason he was a 4th-round draft pick. This guy had late 1st round, early to mid 2nd round talent, but you knew he had problems in Clemson.
Yeah.
So he had the character issue that had dropped him down, and of course, it reared its head in the professional ranks. But I don't think Chase Claypool's that guy. I think Chase Claypool's the guy I'm sure he's working really hard right now, even though he's not in camp. I'm sure he's studying it. I don't know how well a guy like Martavis Bryant was studying on his own, but that's just me guessing.
That's something that we'll have to see. Hey, I want to bring up a couple things here real quick. Ron said, did we watch the video of Claypool doing backflips for 50 yards? Didn't we eventually figure it out that wasn't Claypool doing it? He was the one taking the video, that was someone that he knew doing it, which that would have been insane for a dude that big doing those backflips. I don't think that guy was nearly as big as Claypool. Do you know for sure about that, Michael?
Yeah, it wasn't Chase. That wasn't him.
Okay, so
it was actually Michael.
Michael. Most people didn't realize that, but we did get $9.99 thrown into the tip jar here from Vanilla Thrilla 23. Said, finally caught y'all live. I watch every show, but never live. Big ups to each one of y'all. This season is going to be a blast. That's what I'm saying. I think, who was I saying it to today? It might have even been Lance after I wished him a happy birthday, that I just said, you know what? Even though I have season tickets, I like to go to games, I just want there to be football more than anything. I'm excited. I want to see what the Steelers can get out there and do. They've got so much potential for everything to come together right. It just has to actually happen. So are we ready for trivia, guys?
Ooh, I'm ready.
Yeah.
So
let's have the rookie throw his out first.
We're gonna have the rooks go first.
All right, got to stretch out the neck for this one.
And you have to sing your college fight song too.
Oh gosh, you know what? Our college didn't have a fight song. It's Canadian, not a lot of school pride. Maybe I can sing the Canadian national anthem. I don't know. But transitioning into trivia, Heinz Field broke ground 21 years ago on this day. Obviously, it wasn't the following season when the Steelers kicked off there. But my question, you guys, and I do have the answer as long as my math is correct. How many wins have the Pittsburgh Steelers had in Heinz Field?
Is this regular season and playoffs?
Just regular season.
Just regular season.
Yeah, I should have specified.
Okay. So they opened in 2001.
Correct.
Right, Brian? So It started 2001. So we are talking 18 seasons. No, that would be 19 seasons because they started in 2001. 19 seasons. And let's see. Well, they've probably won between 5 and 6 games at minimum at home each year. So, Brian, if you want to throw it out there, I'm doing the math in my head quick.
I'm trying to do the math in my head too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say 172.
100. Have they played 172 games at Heinz Field?
That'd be closer to the total games they've won since it's been open.
Yeah, that's
just
you're thinking of just the home games. Because
wait, I was taking 6. I was really taking. Oh no, wait. 6
times carry the one. No,
okay, so 6. Let's
Seattle
go with
has 2 losses.
Let's go with 115. Let's go with 115
as well.
Dave, did you throw out a number yet?
I did not. I was going to say I was going to say 111.
Just a little bit less. 98.
98?
Yeah.
I was thinking they would have had about 6 wins a season at home.
Yeah. No, total they've won 196 games. So almost 50-50 split there.
And I went to the regular season opener. And I wasn't supposed to because of 9/11. The opener against Cleveland was moved to the very end of the season. So I had tickets to the second game ever, second regular season game ever.
Right?
Yes, it was early October, and it was during the right after 9/11, where everything was really tense. But I remember going to that game and it being the first ever game in Heinz Field, and it was a win against the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'll never forget it for many reasons.
Well, Michael, once again, let's go and deal with it. Had it right before you brought it up there, and he's like, "Winner, you got it again."
Winner, chicken dinner.
I don't know. I should have maybe gone with the average of 5 a season, but I was thinking that they might have had a better home record than road record. But that's a good number. Brian, do you want to go next? Or you want me to do mine?
I'll go ahead and do mine next.
Okay.
Because yours is going to take 30 minutes.
Oh, no.
So
you don't have to tell 4 stories about yours. It'll be done quick.
That's for sure. I love it. So back in 1981, a wide receiver did not catch at the time, the longest touchdown pass in Steeler history. And it was Mark Malone, a backup quarterback. In a game against Seattle that the Steelers lost 24-21, he caught that from Terry Bradshaw. That night, a player went to a cowboy bar, and it was rumored that he had snapped his forearm on a mechanical bull. But instead, he snapped his right forearm on a punching machine. Who was that player, and what position did he play?
What a weird
What year was this again?
1981.
Okay, so Michael was 15 years away from being born,
Correct. Yeah.
and I was 3. And this is the kind of stuff that Bad remembers.
I remember this
Was
well.
it a high profile player?
Not really, but yes.
Okay,
And I've given you hints in the question.
because it was a cowboy bar. That
Has
might have
nothing to do
been.
with it.
Oh, I thought maybe that was the hint. Let's live chat. What was the bull's name?
Oh, goodness gracious.
Well,
You talked about long reception.
Yeah. I didn't know if that had anything to do with it.
Who caught the ball?
It was Mark Malone.
Yes.
Is that who did it?
No.
I was going to say.
But Mark Malone became the backup quarterback because of this.
Oh,
and
was it,
ended up having to play games
Stout?
later that season.
Is that who it
Yes.
was?
Say it again.
Cliff Stout.
Cliff
Someone had
Stout.
that.
Someone had that in the
Ron
chat.
Chess.
Ron Chess had it. Yeah. Okay.
It was
that
Cliff
makes
Stout.
sense.
It was rumored for the longest time that he did it on a mechanical bull, which I could actually believe because I tried a mechanical bull once in 2003, and I lasted less than a second. I mean, I got on and it just threw me off, and it was
And of
never
course,
again.
we had to have a story. No, I'm messing with you, Brian.
But
I want to go ahead and get mine to make sure we get it in before
There you
the end of
go.
the show. But see that sounds like a 2 a.m. story if it's dealing with a mechanical bull. I went back and read those numbers for the Steelers of the receiving yards over the last 3 years by wide receivers. Here's what is interesting. Then I went and just did not even just wide receivers, by anyone on the Steelers. If you look at the receiving yards over the last 3 seasons, the player that leads the Steelers over the 3-year span is Juju Smith-Schuster. He has just under 3,000. He has almost just under 2,900 at 2,890 something, 95. Okay, which is only actually 60 yards more than Mr. Third and Fifth, who didn't play for the Steelers last year, who was still up there. Over the last 3 years, there is only one player on the Pittsburgh Steelers, one other player that has over 1,000 total receiving yards. Who would that player be?
Over the last 3 seasons.
Over the last 3 seasons has over 1,000 yards receiving. Ryan Switzer. That was in the live chat.
I think I know the answer here.
Okay, we want to let Michael go first just to see.
Yes.
Since Bad's got his answer locked in, he's not going to change it.
I can't remember the numbers James Washington put up in his rookie year, so I'm not. Oh goodness gracious! I'm gonna go with it though. James Washington.
Okay, Brian,
I'm going to go with the Vanimal, Vance McDonald.
you would be correct. One, Brian Anthony Davis. Vance McDonald is the only other player on the Steelers to have have total 1,000 receiving yards over the last 3 seasons, adding them all up. There's one other person who is very close. Michael James Washington is at 952.
Oh.
So you weren't crazy in your thoughts there. And then rounding them out over the last 3 seasons, number 5 is another player who didn't play for the Steelers last year, Jesse James. So out of the average over the not average total over the last 3 seasons, the 5 most amount of receiving yards, 2 of them did not even play for the Steelers last year. So that just kind of goes to show they didn't have much yardage wise from there. So, and we're hoping to get, guys, pushing that this year just individually. So we've got to remember that. And, we're like, oh, well, this receiver could get 900 yards or this receiver could get 800 yards. That's kind of a little bit unrealistic expectations based on that. So guys, anything else for the good of the order, for the good of the show here?
No, just get those yards any way you can and go Steelers.
Oh, love it. Yeah. Hey, if you guys are free later, check out my Mason Rudolph contract article that ran this morning. I'm loving reading the comments, so keep them coming. Check that out if you haven't looked at that already.
I'm sure
checked
you are
a
the belle of the
couple.
ball right now.
I checked a couple. Well, see, because here's the thing about that article, Michael. That there's one key thing that you're thinking of is when it's time for him to have a contract in 2 years, what is it going to be if the Steelers decide that he's the guy? That's what it all comes down to. They have to make that decision. I think this season and him hopefully not playing this season, that's something I still want to put out there that could really have a lot to do with that. Another article that was really interesting that was on the website today that was published this afternoon was based on an article. Jeffrey Benedict put this one out based on an article about the Steelers being, over the last 10 years, being the fourth best, ranked number 4 in drafting over the last 10 years. And a lot of people, I don't think, were thinking that couldn't be right because they think the Steelers miss. You know what? Everybody misses. Everyone misses. Sometimes we get so focused on our black and gold that we don't realize that some of the struggles that we have, other people do too. Like we're like, oh, we need a better backup quarterback. You know what? Most of the league needs a better backup quarterback. Oh, we don't have enough depth at this position. That's one of those positions that the rest of the league's fighting for. Most of the Steelers have been so blessed in years with their offensive line. There are guys that are buried on the depth chart of the Steelers offensive line year after year that would be starters on a lot of other teams because they just don't have the quality guys. I mean, look at Fred Johnson getting snagged up by the Bengals and see what he ends up
best
doing
options.
Yeah. So sometimes we don't understand how good we have it as Steelers fans. It's real. I mean, this is with everyone in life. When you have a lot, sometimes you think that you everything that's going wrong is a problem, when really it could be a whole lot worse. Last year was a bit of a wake-up call, kind of got us awake to some other things going on. We didn't have it as a fan base like other places have to do. So just some interesting thoughts to remember that this is the Pittsburgh Steelers we're talking about. We've got to remember that. We've got the best fan base of the best franchise in professional football, and I would argue in professional sports. What do you guys say?
I agree wholeheartedly with the article because I think they're a great drafting team. We just want them to hit on every pick, and that's not possible. And I mean, I'm guilty of that too.
Yes.
When you're looking at saying who's the bust and who's not, because we talked about him earlier, Terrell Edmunds is probably going to be a lot better player ranked as far as a draft pick than a lot of people will ever believe. But as far as the best fans in the league, yeah, I'll put them up against anybody, especially our BTSC fans right here. Michael.
Exactly. Michael, because we got to do a quick rundown. You got 30 seconds for closing thoughts. What do you got?
Jamal Adams, all for it. Yep, go all in. This team's gonna get better. This receiving core, I love it. This is a super exciting year. I say that word way too much, but I am excited.
Fantastic. Now make sure that you all are checking out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. You got a preview of some of the articles that are on there with some great comments and conversations. Make sure you are subscribing to the channel. We are getting close to that 6,000 that Lance Williams was hoping we'd get by his birthday, but saying that was today. We didn't quite get there. He's hoping to get it this month. Also, if you don't, go and follow Behind the Steel Curtain on Facebook. We are extremely close to 100,000 followers on Facebook. So that would be a great milestone for us. But check out all the podcasts. We've got Lance coming back with the Asset tomorrow night. Steelers Brunch with Tony on Saturday. Sunday, we're not sure. It might be you two fellas. I'm not sure about Lance or anything because it's Father's Day. What's going to happen on Sunday, but there will be a show with hosts to be determined.
I will be on that show.
You will be on that show.
I already have it planned.
Brian will be back on Monday with Tony for Steelers Q&A. I'll be back with my brother on Tuesday for the Stat Geek. And next Wednesday, it'll be Lance. And I think he's going to have a special guest before we kind of get more into that show. So with that said, thank you all for coming in. I got to throw out the bad with that said. I can't help it. Thank you all for joining us in the live chat and the great discussions that we got to see going on in there. And continue to tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. We'll see you all next time.